Yeah, that's right. Neither is, and we're not backed by gold either. Hi, welcome to the Proven Ground Review. We talk about some pretty heated stuff here. As you guys get logged in, let me know if you can see my screen and hear me talking. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes. If you give me a second to get off my pedestal. It takes a minute because my pedestal has a ramp. You know, I can't just step up into it. So.
Bunny hop it.
The bunny hop it. That's right.
Take a lift. I don't know, take a lift.
All right. Well, you guys get logged in. I'm going to say some really important things as I load these charts. I did. I sent it to Ash. Okay.
Thanks for being here, guys. Yeah. Matt was like, you guys should greet people like this.
Right.
I will work on it.
Just you, Elvie.
But yeah, thanks for being here, guys. So have so much fun. You guys know.
On its way, Elvie.
Thank you.
Yeah, she's more important than me, man. I've been waiting like 10.
Phil, I got you, baby. Whatever you need.
I'm just waiting on a link.
I sent it to. Oh yeah.
You send it to the important people, right? Appreciate it.
Jen, what is it, Jen, or is it Jennifer? Oh, I got it. Got you. Hey, what's your phone? Okay, Phil, what's your?
Phil Doc.
All right, Phil.
Pop up. There you go.
Right there. I was gonna send it to you text, but.
Oh, you're good. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Oh, cheese and rice. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, bear with me as I get. Good. Mark can see and hear me. What's wrong with the rest of you guys? Thank you, John. Shut up. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Admittedly, that's what happens when you have a couple shots of whiskey before the session. I probably should have vied for. No, I'm just kidding. It wasn't whiskey, but I did have a cigar, and that's got me on a little bit of buzz. Oh, I know what to do. Okay, everyone, close your eyes because I'm going to put in my secret password so I can connect to my computer at my desk.
Remote desktop to get into Chrome.
They've kind of got the monopoly on things these days.
Do you know what the password is for the guest internet who's here?
Oh, that's a great question. What is the password? Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that.
Oh, this here?
Yes.
Try get started.
All caps. One word.
Get started.
Get started, all caps? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that is my fiduciary responsibility. Let's move on. All right, before we start, because we didn't really have an opportunity to start, does anybody have any questions? Anything we start with? I have a topic in mind, but by all means, if you have a question, we'll go with that. Good, you guys are pros, right? You're good, 100%?
Trading for a living.
Awesome. That's what I want to hear. Fake it till you make it, I guess, right? All right, so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about a couple things. I want to review hedging and price averaging because it's been a really hot topic. And we're going to kind of do some math around that, but we're also going to talk about balance and equity and how that plays into hedging and price averaging, right? Because the number one rule and number two, or the both number one rules in day trading is, what's the number one? Proper. What's the second? Don't lose. I like that. Don't lose money, right? Proper money management, because you know what? People manage their money poorly sometimes, right? So it's proper money management. So you properly manage it correctly and you make money. Okay, so proper money management. The second, just shout it out. It's okay. That's money management. Exit strategy, right? Proper exit strategy. And that coincides with money management, right? So it's kind of symbiont. They're all one. So there are a couple of ways that you can address exit strategy. One is stop loss. The other is hedging and price averaging. If you embark in hedging, you got to know how to get out of that hedge when the time comes, right? Otherwise, it's just a delayed stop loss, right? And possibly may get worse for you. Yeah, yep, I've had that happen. So we don't want to do that. We want to address it by way of price averaging. And for some people, it's, well, here's my setup. I use a flat top, for example. And now I'm in a hedge. So now I'm just going to wait for another flat top. And when that flat top happens in the direction of my original position, then I'm going to try to use that to try to price average out of my original position. So show of hands, how many of you guys, your average trade, let's say your high average trade is for more than 10 pips? 1, 2, 3. I got 3 people. So can we say that suffices to say that most people in the room are going for less than 10 pips? Okay. What I recommend with price average, and what you'll find really quickly, so use my experience or my failure, right, as a roadmap as to what not to do, right, is you don't want to have a price average that requires you to price average for more than what you normally trade at. In other words, if you're going for a 10 pip trade, then you probably don't want to have a price average that's greater than 20 pips, or rather a hedge that's greater than 20 pips. Because the price average out of a 20 pip trade, you divide that by 2 and you've got 10 pips, right? So if you've got an 80 pip hedge and now you've got to call a 40 pip trade where you're used to only calling a 10 pip trade, and now you're emotional because you've got to double down on a trade that you took incorrectly, or just for whatever reason didn't work out, because they don't always work out, right? So now you're emotional and you're relying on yourself to decide when to take a 20 pip trade, because a 40 pip hedge would justify a 20 pip trade. And we'll get to why that is in just a moment. So a 20 pip trade How successful do you think you're going to be at that? Not very successful, right? So let's not start there, right? First of all, if you're only taking about a 3-pip trade, you probably don't want to hedge and price average. You just want to use a stop loss. 3, 5, anything below 10 pips, you probably don't want to use a hedge and price average method. You'll want to use a stop loss. Anything below 10 pips. Okay? Because it would be ridiculous to try to hedge at 6 pips if you're taking a 3-pip trade. Right? Because you'll need a 3-pip trade, and you'll understand really quickly why you need half of the distance of your hedge and price average. Now, what we're going to show you tonight is is going to show you rules upon rules upon rules as to how to properly exit a hedge position. Now, you want to begin with the end in mind. That means if you're planning on hedging and thus price averaging, you want to account for the fact that you're going to price average before you enter your initial trade. In other words, you always want to plan for that very trade to be a loser. So let's do the math. I'm going to use just a 60-minute chart just to make it simple. And let's go somewhere randomly. That's too random. It's not going to 14. Let's go into 15. All right. So I'm going to go to a clean chart. And this is how I taught myself how to hedge and price average. That's not a clean chart. All right. So I set myself up for a place that I normally trade. Let's assume that this time right here is the time that you normally trade, which is going to be actually midnight. Because 6 UTC is offset by how many hours right now? 6 hours. So if it's 0600, that means that we are at midnight Mountain Standard Time. And if you're Central, then it's 1 a.m. If you're Eastern, it's 2 a.m., right? Mountain Daylight, thank you. Because we're in spring. And that's right. In fall, we would actually be at 1 a.m. Thank you. Okay. So we don't cheat and go forward and see what the market would actually do. We press the replay button. If you don't have this option on your green chart, the replay chart, it says RPL. Go to, and this is where you want to take notes if you don't have this. Go to Global Settings. Go to Customize Control Bar. Generally, it's going to be in Control Bar 1. So Control Bar 1. And then if you press this Show Sorted button, it'll show everything in alphabetical order relatively, right? That's 1, so that, I guess, by green chart standards comes before A. So we want to go to RPL, right, which is R. So let's go down to R's. OPQ, and if my recollection serves me correctly, R should be after Q. So right here, you won't see it because I've already got it. Otherwise, it'll show replay chart and then a line like this, and it'll say RPL. Click on it. That's not it, by the way, but click on it. It's not going to show up here because I've already got it. And then wherever you want it to show up on your bar up here, you'll kind of highlight, let's say I want it to be after GDT, go to date. Then I'd click on that one, press the add button, and that will add it just to the right of GDT. Once I've done that, I can press OK. And going forward, it will appear just to the right of GDT, and it'll say RPL. So I'm going to press the RPL button. What this is going to allow me to do is replay this chart. You probably want to have it set to single chart. Everything else should be preset. You should be fine. But make sure it doesn't say all charts in chart book or chart with same link number. Just single chart is fine. And then press play. Notice this is a red candle, but we're going to see it when it first started. So play. And for those of you guys that are online, the feed might delay for a moment, so I'll try not to say anything too imperative. Or I'll give you the secrets to the universe. Let's give that a moment to load.
Can you go through that one more time? How you got there?
Yes,
Just real quick.
absolutely. Yes. So I'm going to go through this one more time. If I don't have the RPL button available, I'm going to go to global settings. Under global settings, I'm going to select customize control bars. And under customize control bars, I'm going to select control bar 1 because that's usually where you have your main settings is control bar 1. Once I'm there, I'm going to show sorted, this button right here. And I'm going to go down to the R's because I'm looking for replay. And under the R's, I'll find replay. It's going to say replay chart. That's what it'll say when I'm here. So wherever it says replay chart, it'll say replay chart, and then it'll have a bar like this, right? So it'll say,
There's one there.
well, this says replay chart play / pause, and that says RPL pips, where this one will say replay chart, and then it'll have a line, and then it'll say RPL. Okay. See, I can explain it better when I talk with my hands, so I got to draw. Okay, we got that? We good? Perfect. All right. So once I've got that, when I press it, it'll bring up this little module here. And as long as I'm selected on the chart that I'd like to replay, then I'll select single chart and press the play button. And once I do that, it'll start replaying from wherever I had. So for example, I go back to this candlestick, I can press play, and it'll start replaying that candlestick. Now, I'll leave that on replay, and then I'll do my analysis. Although I don't rely heavily on support and resistance, I do use it for my exit because it just kind of gives me a general idea of where I'd like to hedge and price average. Once I've determined that area to be a hedge or price average, it is as good as gold. It doesn't matter what the indicators say. If my rule applies at that moment, after I've pressed the buy or sell button, then I execute at that time based on my rules. Because if I rely on my emotion, which is what I'm in after I press the buy or sell button, then I'm going to start looking at the indicators based on what I want to see and not what's actually there, right? How many times have we done that in life, right? No, just me and this guy, right? Right. Not just in trading, but just in general, right? It's like, no, Mike couldn't possibly have smoked that cigarette, right? No way. No, she's a saint, right? Yeah, she had the cigarette in her hand. I saw her put it to her mouth. I saw her inhale, but that could not have possibly, right? We always see what we want to see, so in nothing could be more true in trading. If we want the market to go up, we start seeing everything that tells us the market's going up, right? We start looking at the 1 minute chart, guilty, this guy right here, right? And thinking, oh, a double cross in the 1 minute, that's totally going to go 40 pips in the other direction to get me out of my trade, right? So we don't want to rely on our emotion. We want to rely on our logic. So when I plan out a trade, I pick my exits before I even determine which direction I'm going to trade because I have no bias. Or if I said I'm going to buy, now I've got a bias that says I think the market is going to buy. Therefore, I'm going to be very lax than where I set my parameters for exit if it does go to the sell side, right? Because I'm absolutely convinced that it's going to buy. If I wasn't, why would I take a buy trade? So instead, I work through my checklist and I determine at its necessary point where my exits would be prior to determining which direction the market is going to go. That sounds difficult, right? It's actually really simple. So what I use is support and resistance. So here is where the market is currently, right? Not really, but we're replaying. So I'm going to make that line black. And then I want at least 2 to 3 lines above that position and at least 2 to 3 lines below that position, separated on a 60-minute chart, separated by at least 10 pips, preferably 20 or more, but let's use 10 pips. So that is 112.821. That's current market price, or if it moved up, it don't matter, just wherever you marked at the time. So I can see that obviously we came to this level and bounced. So I'm going to use that level. Maybe I'll use this bottom somewhere down here, right? I can see we came to that level and bounced multiple times. And then I'm going to kind of build in. Now for my support and resistance, I only want to use like 2 to 3 points of validation. So right here at the bottom, I have plenty of points of validation. 1, 2, 3. I've got a ton, right? Where it hit that and bounce, hit and bounce, hit and bounce multiple times, right? Okay, but I don't have very much beyond this high level right here at 1.13020. I've only got that point and maybe this long wick right here and these back here. But I still need another level above that. So that's the only reason I would justify going further back than what's right in front of me. So I'm going to tighten that up a little bit. Are there any other levels? Could I lower it? Do I have to higher it? Whatever it might be. Right? If I drew a level right there to compensate for that, that's 112.925. So that would mean that I have to go to 113.025. Is that about 10 pips away from this line right here? Yeah, about 5 micropips short. So I could probably use that line. I'm going to leave it there. And then I'm going to go back a little bit and see, do I have any other lines? Yeah, there's about a line right here. I can see that I've got a lot of points of validation. I've got a point of validation right here, right here, right here, and even as support right here. So it's a good line. So I'm going to mark that line. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom. Now, because I replayed, if I scroll forward like that, I'm not going to see what the next candle is because I pressed the replay button. So even if I go forward, I can't cheat. I can't see what's going to happen next. And that's not going to bias my opinion. Now I want at least 2 to 3 lines below me. So I use the same thing. Okay, I can see that there's a little bit of support here. Is that validated by anything? Yeah, here it is a little bit, right? Right there, even right there, right here. But it kind of messes up right here, right? Because those kind of poked below and then came back. So could I move that down and still have validation on the shadows of these other candlesticks? So let me adjust that. If I put that there, then I can see I have resistance, support. That kind of sucks, but I still have support and support. So I'm going to use that because I have more points of validation there than and discounting this, I'd say, yeah, that's good, right? Because here's the thing about support and resistance. You're going to over obsess over it if you don't know any better. And you're going to think that somewhere in the world, somebody has a secret formula to perfect support and resistance, and it's absolutely false. No one is ever supremely confident in their support and resistance ever, because statistically it gets broken, right? There was, we always talk about this, there was this book, quote unquote, that was written, and it was like how to day trade. And this is total propaganda, right? And it said, buy on support and sell on resistance. It was 2 pages long, or it was 2 pages. And on the first page, it said buy on support. On the second page, is sell on resistance, the end. If it was that simple, right, we wouldn't be talking right now. It's obviously not that simple. And even if it was, it gives you this indication, this notion that somehow there's this secret formula to the perfect support and resistance. And then for the rest of your life, you go chasing, big fish and hoop dreams and white buffalo and unicorns. So let's not do that. It's more of spirit of the law. When you're using it for your exit, whatever you've determined to be your support and resistance doesn't mean that you are supremely confident that they are going to hold. It just gives you a benchmark to say, after this point, I don't want to risk anymore, and I'm going to institute my exit method. In this case, hedge, right? So I've got two lines below my black line, which is where my entry was, right? And if I measure these lines, I can see that this has got a big separation, about 30 pips. So I probably want to put a line right in between that, right? So let's go with, yeah, that looks fine. 3, 4, 1, 4, 4, 4, 7. So that's about 13 pips. But more importantly, you can see that we have validation for that. Resistance, support, resistance, support, and forget about the rest, right? Because it's not going to match 100%. Let me tell you how I came to this conclusion. I became so obsessed over support and resistance that I went back to January 2015 and I drew in lines of support and resistance, and then I went forward. And every time one of those lines was disrupted and it followed what I thought was the rule, in other words, the body of the candle posts above a level of support or resistance, it must, which is not true, it must continue to the next level of support or resistance. So I drew my lines and I realized, okay, that did not continue. So could I adjust that line? And I'd go back to see, could I adjust it up or down? And then I had this whole color code. If it was red, I could adjust it down. If it was green, I could adjust it up. If it was black, it needed to stay right where it was, so on and so forth. By the time I finished 1 year, the separation between each level of support and resistance was less than a pip. But it resolved every level of support and resistance, right? Is that useful to anyone here? Show of hands. Right. Don't waste your time. I already did it for you. I promise. I already did it for you. It's a waste of time. So don't do it. So it's more spirit of the law. It's not letter of the law. It's just, this is where I see that there could be some support and resistance. I'm going to use that as my exit when I'm using a hedge and price average. If you're using a stop loss, the best way to approach a stop loss is just to have a set number by way of risk to reward. Don't fall into the notion that, well, it's got to fall outside of support and resistance for a stop loss or inside of support and resistance for take profit, because then it puts you back into that mindset that you have to have the perfect lines of support and resistance. You see where this is going? I see a couple nods. Did I lose anybody? Any questions? We're good? All right, so everyone that's not nodding, you guys are just kind of passive, right? But you guys get what I'm saying? You're still not nodding. All right, let's just move on. All right. So we're not going to become obsessed with support and resistance. We have something that works much better. We have indicators, and our indicators are very accurate. Now, if you back test something, let's say it's flat top or it's 3-point, whatever it might be, right? And you find that based on your back testing, you can get a 5 pip take profit with a 15 pip stop loss 80% of the time, right? You're not going to deviate from that if support and resistance is right at that level or beyond or before. It doesn't matter. You're just going to use a 5 pip take profit, 15 pip stop loss. Now, if you're using a hedge and price average method, you still want to look for a hedge that's within that 15 pips. The way you justify that is spirit of the law. Where's your support and resistance? Now, beyond that level, you want to go ahead and hedge price average. Now, my rule, this is Hiram, my rule is the body of the candle has to remain above resistance or below support in order to justify a hedge. So if I have a hedge position on a resistance level that's 10 pips away, then I know that once the candle posts above that, it's not going to be 10 pips. It's going to be like 15, maybe 20 pips. So I want to account for that, right? So if it's going to post above that line, and now I'm in a 20 pip hedge, I want to account for that when I set my lot size. So when I set my lot size, I'm not going to say, well, it's a 10, the hedge position is 10 pips away, so I'm going to say it's a 10 pip take profit and a 10 pip stop loss. No, instead, I'm going to say it's a 10 pip take profit and probably a 20 pip stop loss by the time I hedge. Now, how many of you guys have experienced that the candle just runs away beyond a level of support and resistance before ending? I'm the only one? You don't have to say anything. You don't have to nod. You just raise your hand. All right. So it's a couple of you guys, right? It happens. The market runs away. So there has to be an exit method to an exit method. That means what is our ultimate stopping point? When do we say enough is enough? And there are a few of you guys that know the answer to that. It's called ER. What is the answer?
Equity reset.
Yeah. And what percentage of that is? 5% of your total account balance. 5% of your total account balance. And that should be the exception, not the rule. You shouldn't be hitting that often, if at all, right? Troy with his, because this is, it always happens. If I rolled out a new pattern today and I showed you guys how well it worked, you guys would be talking about it for another month. Troy is talking about his setup. So every one of you guys is going to be talking about it for another month, just like Dr. Zed's setup a month before that, and whatever was before that, and so on and so forth and so on, right? It's just trend. It's just what happens. And as much as we try to discourage you guys from jumping from this to that to so on and so forth, it's futile. So go ahead, have at it. And I'll tell you, I told you so after the fact. But look at Troy's setup, for example, because that's fresh in everyone's mind right now. For those of you guys that know Troy's setup, I'm not taking away from Troy's setup. It's awesome. He's doing great with it. But he talks about a 12 pip stop loss with a 1.2 pip profit. Even at 90 some odd percent, you're still going to lose profit, right? But that 12 pip stop loss, he says, I'll never use that 12 pip stop loss. It might happen occasionally, but it's the exception. It's not really the rule. I'm never going to hit that 12 pip stop loss. I'm going to do something about it way before that. And everyone's like, what are you going to do about it? Well, that's how Troy trades, right? He sees the indicators, he's watching the trades. But the reason I say that is because the math doesn't work out. That's his ER. He says, if the market just so happens, Trump sends a tweet out and all of a sudden the market goes haywire, then cool, I get stopped out at 12 and it doesn't go crazy against me for a 1 pip trade. But how often is that going to happen? Not often. It's not really going to be something that's going to happen often. So when it does happen, it's just kind of a safety net. It's a end all be all. This is as much as I'm willing to risk. I'm going to put it out there, but I don't really expect that it's going to be hit. It's just if something unexpected happens, I don't lose my account in a flash crash, right? Or a big move in one direction. All right. So it's the same concept. All right, so now we've got some lines. We've got 2 lines in this line way out here. So let's try to fill that gap here between here and here, which is about 30 pips. I'm going to go back and try to fill in that gap. See, there's probably some potential. There's probably some potential somewhere in here. We see these wicks, and they correlate with this wick over here. So if we see potential, what I'll do is I'll kind of dash it and see, okay, is there any validity to that level? A little bit right there, right? And maybe even there and there. Let's see. No, we're not even going to obsess over it. We're just going to leave it right there. It's perfect. It's perfectly imperfect. Good. There's my level. It's about how much I care about support and resistance. Okay. So now I've got my levels of support and resistance. I still don't know which direction I'm trading. I haven't looked at indicators. I haven't looked at trend. I haven't looked at anything. All I've done is drawn lines thus far, right? So then I ask myself, if I buy from this position, then I will hedge at a post beyond, there's good, 17.8, right? If I'm taking a 10 pip trade on a regular basis, then I know I can get out of a 20 pip hedge. And we'll explain here in a second. So this is going to be a good hedge position because after it posts beyond that, it could be around 20 pips. Now, if I sell, I'm going to want a hedge. That's about 10. That's about 18.6. So good, right there. I'm going to hedge a post above that blue line, right? So I don't know which direction I'm trading yet, but I still know where I'm going to hedge if I buy or if I sell, because I'm thinking logically right now. I'm not thinking emotionally. How many of you guys understand that? You press the buy or sell button, all of a sudden you're an emotional wreck. This guy right here. That's why I want to be in and out of a trade really quickly. Right? And I've been doing this for 6 years. This guy, don't be shy. It's just how it is. It's all right. Right? There's my hedge. My price average is generally going to be above those. I want to see a bounce from the price average that's going to be like triple, double, triple what I need in order to get out of my hedge. So with these, I probably need like a 10 pip price average. So that means that I want to see a bounce from one of these levels up here or down here below these blue lines that are 20, 30 or more pips. So if I measure this bounce right here when it touched that line, I can see, yep, I got more than 20 pips there, right? And then here again, when it came up to here, yep, I got more than 20 pips there. So this might be a little too close. This is only about 13 pips away from that. Let's just put our price average right there. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to execute the price average there. That just means that's where I'm going to consider a price average. So when the market gets to that level, I'm going to look at my indicators and determine, can I take a trade that's going to be worth what I need to price average out of my trade? So I'm going to look at the indicators and determine where my hedge was just based on technical analysis, because that's all I can do at that point. I don't want to rely on myself looking at indicators and making a logical decision as to whether or not I should hedge when I'm in an emotional state. Therefore, I use a technical setup so that I can make the decision now on where I would execute when I'm in an emotional state. Does that make sense? All right, still only a couple heads turning there. So if you guys have questions, ask, please. Okay.
How did you determine that red line?
This red line?
Yeah, why did you pick that for your price average line?
This one was just too close. Generally, I would go back. I can see that that one got close and then rejected. Generally, I would go back and say, okay, when it got to that red line, what kind of rejection did we get? So right here, that only went 7.4 and then went down 17.9 and then kind of went back and forth and then eventually went about 29.9. Right here, it dropped significantly. Right here, it dropped 16 and then another drop there to 43. So I just want to see that it is definitely someplace where the miners are going to see as a resistance level, because historically it shows resistance or support if I'm looking at the bottom. Because if you'll notice, even if the miners push all together collectively will result in a movement down, even if the majors still want to continue up. All I need is enough to get me out of my price average. I don't care what happens after that. So I want to see double or triple what it would take to get me out of my price average. And the miners are more than capable of doing that just based on an emotional level. They call them psych levels. You guys heard that? Yeah, it's BS. Anyway, so psych levels or support and resistance levels, whatever. But you can see that those levels represent somewhere where the market rejected price significantly. And it wasn't just like this arbitrary thing where the market rejected prices, because the majors decided to reject price there. Let's remember that, right? The majors are moving these markets back and forth. So if the miners think that the market, quote unquote, is just going to reject price there, then they're going to pull out of their buys or start selling at those levels, right? So if they do that with enough force, then you're able to get out of your price average. So all we're looking at is statistically, are we going to be able to get out of that at that level? And then we're going to use our indicators to determine if at that level we're seeing what coincides with our technicals. So our technicals, again, just become secondary. We still need to see our indicators validating whatever we're comfortable with at that level to justify an exit. The other option is just to justify an exit based on a setup that you're already familiar with. So if you're familiar with half top or a half court or whatever it might be, and you by way of your back test, and you can see you get 10 pips whenever you get that setup, then you're going to want to use that. And when you see that next, in order to justify taking that price average, otherwise you use technical analysis. Okay, so now I've got my if I sell built out, because if I sell, I hedge here, I price average. I hedge at this blue line or when it posts above that, and then I look to see if I can price average at the red line. Now, if I buy, I see that I can hedge there and possibly price average. I see a lot of rejection there, more rejection, consistent rejection down here. So let's use this level. Because look, everything before that, there's nothing there. So back here as it rose to the occasion and then came down, sat right on that level. Am I going to trust that level to trade on? No, but I'm going to use it to review my indicators to determine if I can get a price average out of it. So now I know what I'm going to do if I buy or sell. And this is what I do. This is what I did numerous times when I was practicing how to hedge and price average. I took my charts back. I looked at the times that I was available to trade. I drew in lines, and then I let it play, and I pretended that I took the opposite direction of whatever direction it went. So if it went up, I assumed that I took a sell. If it went down, I assumed that I took a buy. Because the idea is to put yourself in a situation where you can practice hedging and price averaging, not calling the market, right? Now imagine if you try to do this in real time. It would take a long time, hours and hours and hours. But you can, in just an hour, if you didn't have to explain it like I just did, you could do this 10, 15 times, right? Especially if you've got lines and you can just continue to use those lines as the next day progresses and adjust your lines and so on and so forth. Okay, so here we are. Do we know if we're in a buy or sell yet? Nope, we don't know yet because we're going to assume the opposite position of wherever the market goes. We want it to post above this blue line or below that blue line. So let's fast forward. Let's see which it does. Oh, 43, 39, 13 minutes. Let's slow that down a little bit. We're already to our price average level. So right there is a great example, right? If we were in a sell and that strong move up represented 5% of our account, we close the trade out. We take the loser, and it sucks, and it hurts, and you probably won't trade for a couple days. And next time you get into a trade, you'll be really cautious. But what's important is that you continue to pull the trigger. So what makes you really confident in pulling that trigger after taking a heater like that and losing 5% of your account is having something that's systematic. It doesn't rely on you analyzing based on what you see and what you perceive in the market, but very structured rules. For those of you guys that are familiar with cards, because I'm familiar with that, it's called being on tilt. Troy's back there laughing because he knew that's where I was going. It's called being on tilt. So what happens is when you play Texas Hold'em, and we play every other Friday, there's a set way of playing based on the cards that you have. And there's odds based on the cards that you have. And Texas Hold'em is one of those games that is not considered gambling because it's not a game of risk. The odds are actually in your favor as the player if you know how to play correctly, even if you play just by the set rules. So based on where you are as adjacent to the dealer is how you would play whatever hand you currently have in your, that no one else can see, and there's community cards. Now, more successful poker players, Hold'em players, will read body language, betting strategy, so on and so forth of the other players. So versus just playing their cards, they're able to play how the other players are playing their cards and thus be able to bluff or, fold hands that they shouldn't play because they know that the other player has a better hand or the other player is pretending like they have a better hand, so on and so forth. Now, every once in a while, you have a good read and somebody gets lucky, or you just had a bad read and they win. The other player wins, even though you're absolutely certain that you've got their number. They know exactly what they're doing. You've been studying their trade strategy, their betting strategy, and their the way they play different hands. And so you play against them and you lose. Well, then you go on what's called tilt. And when you're on tilt, It means that you're emotional, and your emotions are going to circumvent your logic. And your logic tells you this is what this player is doing, or this is what my cards say. It's going to circumvent all of that. And what you'll do is you'll chase down what you think are good hands to try to, we call it revenge trade, right? Where you just took a loser, now you're revenge trading, or you're scared to pull the trigger. In any event, the rule is you just let the next the next 5 hands go. It doesn't matter how good you think they are, just fold them. And just pay attention to what everyone else is doing. So in trading, it's the same thing. The next 5 trades that you see, let them go. And just pay attention to what the market did. Because what that's going to do is it's going to reestablish why you would have been right in those situations and why that would have made you profit. And so then getting back into trade and pulling the trigger is just going to make you confident that you know what you're doing, right? And the losers are just the cost of doing business. But how can you be absolutely supremely certain as to what you're doing is the correct approach? Your stop loss take profit. How do you figure that out? Everybody knows the answer. Back test. That's it. Right? If you don't do that, put yourself in that emotional state. I want you to imagine that. I want you to imagine you haven't back tested the setup. You took a gap trade. You took an on-it trade. You took an AIT trade, whatever it may be. You took a pattern. You took an alert, and you didn't back test any of it. Now all of a sudden you're in no man's land. You didn't plan for this, right? And now it's time to make a decision. All of a sudden you start looking for reasons to stay in that trade. It's a 5 pip trade and you're 25, 30, 40 pips down. You're risking all of your account, 40 pips for a 5 pip trade. This happens, right? And to some of you guys in the room, it's happened. And you've lost your account over it. Over a 3 pip trade, a 5 pip, even a 10 pip trade, you lost your whole account. Hoping and praying and wishing. Smoking that, what do you call it? Hopium. Smoking that hopium. Hoping the market's going to come back in your favor, right? When really, even in the instances where you would have just closed a bad trade and it would have worked out, it's irrelevant. Here's your risk appetite. Here is where you've drawn the line in the sand. Wherever you've drawn the line in the sand, you stick to it. You have integrity. If you don't, it's going to eat your lunch. It will. It's not if, but when. It will. Take it from me. Had it happen too many times. Let's just assume that we just picked the just wrong, right? But here, had we entered, I mean, that went up 69.5 pips. There's absolutely no reason you should hedge or be in a trade that's 69. How many of you guys, by show of hands, calls a 30 pip trade on a regular basis? Good. 1. All right. So you're okay to be in a hedge that's, 30, 60 pips, 35 pips. So the rest of you guys, can you call a 35 pip trade under emotion, under pressure? Nope. So you have no business. So if that happens, what do you do? ER. You close a trade. Take the loser. It's the best thing you'll I promise you. Please believe me. Please, I'm telling you, just close the trade. You can hedge. You can pray to God. I'm sure he doesn't work that way because I prayed to him and I believe in him fervently, and he still didn't help me out of that situation. The 15th or the first time that I prayed to him in that situation, just didn't help me out. So I'm pretty sure he doesn't care about that.
Once you learn your lesson.
Hey, once you know, yeah, that's right. Oh, I just restarted that. Okay. So that's equity reset. Now, let's say hypothetically you're in a situation where you actually hedged in that position, and we'll make it more reasonable because I want to show you guys this example before we go, and I've got about 10 minutes. So let's say that we hedged at this. Let me fast forward this. I'm just going to make up some lines here because the rules are more important than the lines. All right. So right here, I've got 30 seconds And let's say that my entry was right here, and now I am upside down, and I broke my hedge position upside down about 23.4 pips. That's my hedge position. Disregard the rest of these lines. And let's say that my price average is up here. I just made up that line, just to be clear. All right, so now I'm in a hedge, right? That posted above my line, I'm in a hedge. So this line right here is going to represent my hedge position. And this black line down here is going to represent my entry. So from my hedge position to my entry, 13,149 to 13,378. So 2.3, so it's about 16.3 and some change, right? So let's just say 17 pips. So I'm about a 17 pip hedge. That means between this black line and this pink line is 17 pips. Okay.
Hiram, just to be clear, the hedge line, that's just, you got in the market again.
Yeah, that's right. The hedge line is where I got in the market again. So here was a sell,
In the opposite direction.
and here was a buy because I wanted to go in the opposite direction. Now I had a take profit in my sell, right? This is important. Remove your take profits. You have 0 take profits. None in the sell, none in the buy. You have a buy and a sell, no take profits, 0 take profits. Okay? So don't be of the persuasion that you can go to sleep because you have a pending buy in just in case the market goes up. Because what could happen is the market goes up, accept your buy, come down, take you out of your original position, and now you're negative in the buy that you postured for. The solution to that is HPA Overwatch, which is an expert advisor that we have by way of the mastermind. You set it up so you can go to sleep, and when the time to hedge comes, it will hedge for you, release your take profit, and have a true hedge, buy, sell, no take profit. If the market runs away before that hedge is activated, then after whatever percentage of your account you risk is allocated, it will just close your trades and you'll lose that percentage, but you can go to sleep on it, right? It's called HPA because it's hedge price average. It was created by Christian Ullman, who is a military guy, and Overwatch is just what they call snipers that watch over them as they, as they're working in an urban situation or otherwise. So it's just watching your back, basically. And that's why he called it Overwatch, which I thought was awesome. But it's called HPA Overwatch. Here's the pitch. You guys ready for it? In order to have it, you got to be part of Mastermind. Okay, I got the pitch. Tim wasn't even here to listen to it. I thought it was good.
That was good.
It was a good pitch,
Smooth.
right? It was smooth.
Smooth transition.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so we're in the 17 pip hedge. What's half of 17? 8.5, right? Let's call it 9. Whoa. Let's call it 9 pips. So we're in 9 pip. That means that in order to price average out of this, when we get to this level, this red level up here, we can review indicators, and then we would release our profit from our hedge position, right? Which at that level, 13.37 to 13.77 is about 40 pips. So we would make, let's say we would make 40 pips on our hedge position at that red line. So now we earned 40 pips, right? But we're still 17 pips deficit from our original position, because although we made 40 pips there, our original position is 57 pips negative, right? Because we're 17 pips negative here, and then plus 40 is 57 pips negative in our original position. Okay, so we're negative 57 pips on our original position, and we just closed a trade for 40 pips positive. What's the difference in our balance and equity? 17 pips. So it doesn't matter if we go 1,000 up, 1,000 down, we're still just 17 pips, because one trade would be 1,000 pips profitable. The other one would be 1,017 negative, which would still be a total of 17 negative, right? So we decided that half of that is going to be, let's just say 9, right? So we said 9. So that means that at this level, we're going to take a trade for 9 pips down, right? If the indicators tell us that that's a good place to short for 9 pips, right? Now, if we're 57 pips negative at that red line and we take a trade down and we add 9 pips because we hit that, right? So now we're 49 pips positive with our hedge that we closed and plus the 9 pips that we took to the short side. Well, that's less than 57, right? But at this level, is this trade 57 pips negative anymore?
No.
Right. What is it negative? -9, right? So that's 46 or 48, sorry. 48. That's a big 8. Let's just extend that. There we go. -48. 40 plus 9 is what? 49. Which number is bigger? Even if it wasn't, we still broke even, probably still less commissions, right? We traded a lot size of 1 in CoinX, that's $6. And we made 1 pip extra. So that would be $10 minus $6 for the 3 trades that we put in. So we would have made $4, but roughly broke even, right? So when you put in that first trade, that's how the hedge and price average works. Now, I've got just a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to hand it off. Now, here's the exit method to the exit method. One was, which we already discussed, if the market just hauled tail against you and you get a chance to hedge, if it goes how many max, and you guys would probably be at that max or less, where would you just stop the trade out if the market just ran away? 5%, right, of your total account balance. And then you just close it. That should be the exception. That shouldn't happen often. But when it does, you close the trades, get out of it, take the lickings, move on. Let's say that it didn't. Now, here's your exit method to exit method. Let's say that it gets to this level up here, this red line, and you've price averaged. My rule was if I'm expecting for it to bounce here, and I'm using the same rules that I would use for support and resistance, and I'm emotional, so I'm not going to think any different way, then, and I read the indicators, the indicator said, yes, sell, but I was wrong because we do that, we're wrong, right? Well, what happens if I'm wrong? When do I decide that I'm wrong and I do something about it? Well, if the candle posts above the level where I expected to price average, so the candlestick, not the wick, but the actual candlestick posts above that level, then I close my price average and I re-hedge, right? And whatever the difference is in the re-hedge, I add that to my negative, and I got to make up for that now. Here's the third, or actually fourth now, exit method to exit method. If I sit in a hedge position that I have attempted to price average and failed or what have you, 48 hours from when I first hedged it, says 48 1-hour candles, I close it and take the loss. So that means that you should never have a trade that goes more than 5 pips against you, and you should never hold on to a trade that's negative for more than how many hours? 48 hours. 48 hours. That keeps your balance and equity relatively tight and the same, and your winners will, in compared to your losers, make sure that your account moves up and to the right, slow and steady. You get those increases in your corporate funding. You get a return on investment. You supplement, replace income, build wealth, so on and so forth and so on. But it's about being integrous to your rules. If you have no integrity to your, it's the hardest thing to do, right? Because being integrous to ourselves and our own rules is the hardest thing to do. There's no oversight. And we can give ourselves slack. Just remember that slack is going to cost you. And it's not if, but when. And if you're not careful, it can cost you your whole account.
You have to be a mastermind member to have Slack.
Slack?
I'm just kidding.
Oh, Slack. That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. You have to be a mastermind member to have Slack. Thank you. That was a second plug. So we did it twice, right? All right. All right, guys. So how do we practice hedging and price averaging? That was one guy. Anybody else? All right. Thank you. All right. I'm going to hand it off to Kevin. Kevin Jones has some stuff for those of you guys that are online. Hang out for a second. And for those of you guys that are here, let's give Kevin our attention for a moment. And I'm going to give him the mic so that you guys online can hear what he's saying as well. Yeah, somehow, some way. I don't know what I did there. There you go, man. Thank you.
You had it really linked up there. All right, guys. Thank you for being here tonight. Couple of things. You guys are aware next, not this Friday, but next, we have our 3 trading strategies event. It's going to be in this room. And we also have that same night, or that same day, not same night, same day, a training for all of our CODs across the country. So they're going to be in town. We're going to be using the room behind us. So the strategies event is going to be held in the room this size, okay? So if you guys want to come, make sure that you get a ticket and let us know, because we're actually going to have a lot more limited seating than normal for that. We do have the short term, the medium term, and the long term strategy that's going to be covered. Something for you guys to come and pick that thing that either you want to really work on or the thing that you feel like you already know that you need to tune in, okay? The other thing that I wanted to mention to you guys, some of you guys have heard of the Platinum program that we just created. So you guys, if you know, we have a partner that we work with around our tax advice, right? You guys familiar with that? And it's something that we've had separate for a long time. And so what we decided is we wanted to include that. So we pulled that into a package. We also included a year of events so that you guys can come once a month and be a part of those events, because the time that you guys spend in this room with a coach like Hiram is going to make a big impact on your long-term success as a trader. If I could pick a single indicator that says whether somebody is going to succeed with us as a trader, it's going to be the more involved they are, the better the chance they have at that. Right? And that, you can really apply that to any part of your life. The more involved you get around that thing, right? So, and then there's really so much more included in that. One of the biggest things that we did with the Platinum package is we did a monthly review instead of a quarterly review for your increases on your account. So how many of you guys have gone through a quarterly review so far? Okay. And what you look at that and you think to yourself, what would happen if I could increase the speed of that by 2/3, right? Move it into a monthly thing. It's a big deal. So just something to look at. If you guys have any questions about it, let me know. And I'm excited to see you guys here next Friday. Let's give, oh, you got a question?
Another question.
Yeah.
So if you do a monthly review,
Yes.
how much do you increase the account each month, and how many months does it take to reach 100,000?
Yeah. So the question is, how does it look compared to a quarterly? Is that the question? And the answer is it's exactly the same as if it was quarterly. So you would be able to achieve the speed in 1/3 the time.
That's awesome.
Does that answer it? Does that make sense to you guys the way I answered that?
So that
Because if you were to trade for 3 months, but you were in the Platinum, you traded for a month, we're going to work with you to have the same type of increases take place in that shorter amount of time.
does that mean instead of reaching 100,000 in 12 months, by a quarterly review, you reach 100,000 in 4 months?
That could be the case, yes. Yep. So I will say this, it's yet to happen for anybody because we haven't done it yet.
Go get it.
That would be the goal.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And the biggest thing that you guys need to look at around your increases is the things that your coaches are teaching you around your equity versus your draw, or your equity versus your
Balance.
my word, thank you. I was thinking peak drawdown. Yes, balance and equity. We want those curves to go together, right? We want our peak drawdown to be low. We want our average win versus our average loser to be at the right ratios, right? We're going to be paying attention really heavily to your leverage that you're using on each trade, right? How much volume you're trading against the value that's in the account. Those are the things that we're looking at. A lot of times people get hung up on, I want to make a lot of profit, I want to make a lot of returns, and that's what we're looking at. Those are really actually one of the last things that we look at around whether or not to increase an account by how much, okay? So, the speed would just really be 1/3 of the time. So.
There you have it, folks.
Anyway.
Horse's mouth.
Yep.
You heard it from the horse's mouth.
That's right. Okay, well,
Thank you, Kevin.
thank you guys. Any more questions before I go? Appreciate you guys. Let's give Hiram a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you. John Stacy says hello, Kevin.
What's that?
John Stacy says hello.
Oh, hi, John.
Hey, John. Kevin says hello. That's the horse's mouth, guys. So that, and we've talked about that before. Balance and equity, keeping that very tight. Making sure that you got that up into the right movement. The amount that you grow up by is going to be less significant than smart trading. We've been doing this long enough, Kevin longer than most, to know, look, a smart trader is going to have tight balance and equity. And if you're getting increases, let's just say hypothetically, this is not, don't take this to the bank, but let's just say after 3 months you get a double up. What if you're getting a double up after a month, and then a month later you're getting another double up, then after a month later you're getting another double up? That's equivalent to a triple up after 3 months. Think about that, right? So smart up into the right trading, that's going to get you to where you need to be much more significantly than trying to knock down a monster trade or sacrificing your whole account on a 5 pip trade. Keep that in mind, right? So get disciplined, have integrity to your rules, and execute. Happy trading, guys. We'll see you guys next week. Yes, sir.
What do they charge for? What's the?
The new platinum, I think, is 23.
So that's if you're going in initially. Then.
Yeah, but wherever.
So if I went in on the middle one, so that'd be 10 grand
Let me.
more.
I'm gonna wrap up this session because I'm gonna hold that question. I'm gonna wrap this up first because I'm gonna say something that's not official. Hey, my pleasure, Mark. You guys have a good one. John, you have a good one. Thanks, guys, for joining us.